You might think a normal morning is the safest moment of your day, right? Well, here's the twist: crises don't show up wearing warning labels. One second you're sipping fresh coffee, scrolling your phone without a care, and the next, everything you depend on stops cold. The lights flicker, the house falls silent, and that comfortable routine you trust so much, it vanishes in the blink of an eye. Picture this. You're standing in the half-lit reflection of a window, holding a phone that suddenly shows nothing but darkness. No signal, no power, no clue what's happening beyond your own walls. That eerie, heavy quiet settles over the room, the kind that tells you something's wrong even before you understand what it is. And in that moment, every prepper truth you ignored suddenly feels painfully real. Real preppers know that life rarely gives you second chances. When the grid goes down, or the world throws you a curveball, hesitation becomes regret fast. Most people only understand this after the moment hits, when they're left wishing they'd taken action sooner. And honestly, that's usually the moment that marks a turning point. The moment someone realizes preparation isn't paranoia, it's responsibility. And this story is just the beginning of why. Most people go through life believing emergencies happen somewhere else to someone else. It's easy to think disasters are headlines you scroll past, not moments that knock on your own door. But real preppers know better. They understand how quickly comfort turns into chaos, and how thin the line between normal and unprepared really is. That realization doesn't come from fear, it comes from experience. Maybe it was a blackout that lasted longer than expected. Maybe it was a storm that hit harder than the forecast warned. Or maybe it was just that uneasy feeling in your gut when the world suddenly felt a little less stable than it used to be. Every prepper has a moment, big or small, that opens their eyes. And once you see the world through that lens, you can't unsee it to start taking responsibility for your own safety. But that's why today we're going deep into the 10 survival items Americans always regret not having before a crisis. Not because these tools are flashy or expensive, but because they give you control when everything else feels uncertain. Each one carries a lesson, a mindset shift, a reminder of how preparedness actually works. And as we break them down, you'll start noticing something powerful. How simple gear can completely change the story when life throws you the unexpected. Before we dive into the list, there's something worth mentioning. A lot of people want to start prepping but get overwhelmed by the mountain of advice out there. It's easy to feel lost or unsure about the first step. That's exactly why I put together a simple, beginner-friendly checklist, something you can actually follow without stress. It's like having a seasoned prepper quietly guiding you from the sidelines. This isn't a sales pitch or some pushy offer. It's just a clean, organized resource that lays out the basics in a way that makes sense. No fluff, no fear, just clarity. You'll find the link in the description if you want to take a look, and honestly, even if you've already started your prepping journey, it might help you spot gaps you didn't notice before. Think of it as a quick win, a small boost of confidence before you build your gear or strengthen your plan. That feeling of, okay, I know what I'm doing now, is priceless when the world feels unpredictable. Grab it if you want, no pressure at all. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the 10 survival items Americans always wish they had before things went sideways. When a crisis hits, it rarely announces itself with clear warnings. Most people rely on their phones, thinking a notification will save the day, but seasoned preppers know better. Phones die, towers fail, and the grid collapses faster than anyone expects. That's why an emergency radio isn't a luxury. It's lifeline gear. It's the difference between being blindsided and being one step ahead. Imagine this. A storm rolls in harder than predicted, the power cuts, and every device in your home silently fades to black. The world outside becomes a guessing game. But with a simple hand crank radio, you're not in the dark, you're informed. You can tune into weather alerts, evacuation notices, or updates the moment they're broadcast. Information becomes your first shield. Real preppers trust radios with multiple power sources, solar batteries, and hand crank. Why? Because redundancy is survival. When one method fails, another picks up the slack. And unlike apps or Wi-Fi, radio signals travel even when everything else collapses. It's old school technology, but sometimes the old ways are the ones that save you when modern tools go silent. There's also something grounding about hearing a human voice during chaos. It snaps you out of panic and pulls you back into decision-making mode. It reminds you that you're not isolated, not clueless, not guessing in the dark. That mental clarity is a powerful asset, one most people don't realize they need until they've already lost it. Preppers often share stories of barely catching a critical alert: flash floods, tornado warnings, chemical spills because their phone was either dead or late. But the radio, it didn't miss a beat. When seconds count, every update matters. And that small device sitting quietly in your kit suddenly becomes the hero of the moment. So while most Americans overlook emergency radios, real preppers know this tool buys you something priceless: time. Time to act, time to move, time to protect your family before danger is at your door. And once you see how vital that advantage is, the next item on this list starts making even more sense. Especially when the grid stays down longer than you expect until it's too late. The grid is far more fragile than it looks. We treat electricity like it's guaranteed, like it's just part of the background of life, always there. always waiting. But real preppers know how quickly a routine outage can turn into a silent emergency. And when every device in your home dies at the same time, you suddenly understand how dependent you are on a system you can't control. Maybe you've lived through one of those outages, the kind that starts as an inconvenience and slowly becomes unsettling. Hours pass, the charge bars on your phone drop lower, and that uneasy feeling creeps in. Without communication, navigation, or even a flashlight app, things get real fast. That's when a backup power bank stops being a gadget and becomes a lifeline you wish you depacked sooner. Preppers don't carry just any power bank. They choose high-capacity ones with solar recharging options. Because when the grid stays down longer than expected, sunlight becomes your new power source. A reliable solar charger means you can keep your phone, radio, or flashlight running without relying on stores, gas stations, or anything external. Independence starts with a single charged battery. Think of it this way: when your devices die, so does your access to information, maps, family contacts, and emergency alerts. A simple power bank keeps your world alive when everything else around you goes quiet. It's not about luxury. It's about staying connected to reality when reality shifts suddenly, and that connection can guide your next move. Seasoned preppers always say the same thing: charge is control. With a working device, you can call for help, check weather patterns, or navigate unfamiliar areas. Without it, your guessing and guessing is dangerous in a crisis. That's why having at least one power bank ready to go, and another stored away, is a standard rule among those who've experienced the unexpected firsthand. And here's the thing: once you understand how much a little power can calm your mind during chaos, the next survival item becomes even more obvious. After all, having electricity means nothing if you have access to the one resource humans can live without: clean water. And that leads us straight into one of the biggest regrets Americans have after every crisis. In every crisis, there's a moment when people realize the truth real preppers already know: water isn't guaranteed. It only takes a few hours without running taps for panic to spread. Most Americans assume water will always flow until the day it doesn't, and when that happens, the scramble begins. But seasoned preppers stay calm because they carry something simple, compact, and powerful: a reliable water filter. Think back to the last big storm or blackout you lived through. Maybe you filled the bathtub just in case, without really thinking about why. That instinct comes from someplace real, because deep down, you know how quickly clean water can disappear. And the scary part: you only notice the shortage when you're already too close to running out. That's why preppers say water is peace of mind in liquid form. A good filtration straw or portable filter turns questionable water into something safe enough to trust. It strips out bacteria, parasites, and the microscopic threats that turn desperation into disaster. You can dip it in a creek, a lake, or even a muddy puddle if you have to. When the world feels uncertain, having the ability to purify your own water is a kind of freedom most people never think about. But here's where real preppers stand apart. They don't just buy a filter, they practice using it. They test it on camping trips, road trips, even backyard drills. Because the middle of a crisis isn't the time to read instructions. Familiarity builds confidence, and confidence prevents panic. A filter isn't just gear. It's a skill, and that's what truly separates preparedness from luck. What surprises most beginners is how lightweight these filters are. They take up almost no space and weigh less than a snack bar, yet they carry the power to keep you alive for days. In survival situations, water becomes currency more valuable than gear, gadgets, or even food. With a filter in your kit, you're not afraid of empty shelves or dry faucets. You have control when others don't. And once you experience the relief of knowing water is never out of reach, the next step in preparedness starts to make even more sense. Because water keeps you alive. Yes, but tools keep you capable. And that's exactly why the next item on this list is something no seasoned prepper ever leaves behind. Every seasoned prepper knows that survival isn't about having a giant toolbox, it's about having the right tool at the right moment. And that's where the multi-tool earns its reputation: compact, versatile, and always ready. It quietly solves problems most people don't even notice until they're already stuck. In a crisis, it is not the flashy gear that saves you, it's the simple tool you can reach in seconds. Think about all the little fixes that pop up during normal life: loose screws, stuck zippers, quick cuts, tiny adjustments. Now imagine those same small problems happening during an emergency, when stakes are higher and time matters. A multi-tool becomes your personal mini workshop, stepping in exactly when you need it. It's surprising how often minor inconveniences turn into major setbacks without it. Real preppers treat their multi-tool like a trusted companion. They choose models with strong pliers, sharp blades, screwdrivers, scissors, and wire cutters, because every one of those components has a job. This isn't about collecting functions, it's about utility. When you're making shelter repairs, prepping food, or improvising fixes on the fly, that small bundle of stainless steel becomes worth its weight in gold. But the real magic of a multi-tool shows up in field practice. The more you use it, the more your instincts sharpen. you start to understand which functions matter most, how fast you can deploy each tool, and how to make quick repairs under pressure. It's like learning an instrument. The better you know it, the smoother everything flows when it counts. Plenty of preppers have shared stories about how a multi-tool saved their day, cutting fishing line, tightening gear straps, repairing water bottles, even removing splinters in the wild. They're small victories, yes, but small victories stack up into real preparedness. And when every second counts, not having to search through bags for separate tools is a game changer. And here's the part most beginners overlook. The multi-tool teaches you self-reliance. It shows you how capable you can be with just a handful of well-designed functions. That feeling, the shift from dependence to resourcefulness, makes the next item on this list even more important, because where there's capability, there's the need for fire. Fire is one of those things people take for granted until the moment they desperately need it. Real preppers understand that fire isn't just warmth. It's survival, morale, purification, cooking, signaling, and protection rolled into one. Yet most Americans walk into emergencies with nothing more than a half-empty lighter that barely works in the wind. A proper fire starter changes everything. It turns panic into possibility. Think back to the first time you tried to light a campfire in less than perfect conditions. Maybe the wood was damp, the wind was stubborn, or your lighter kept slipping in your hand. Suddenly, the simple act of creating a flame felt like a challenge. Now imagine that same struggle in a cold rain, with night approaching fast. That's when a fire starter stops being gear and becomes a lifeline. Preppers rely on ferro rods, magnesium blocks, and waterproof matches because they work even when the weather doesn't cooperate. A good fire starter throws sparks hot enough to catch almost anything: birch bark, cotton balls, dry grass, even thin shavings of wood you carve yourself. It's the kind of reliability you only appreciate after you've seen a storm swallow your lighter whole. But gear alone isn't enough. Experienced preppers know that fire is a skill before it's a flame. They practice in their backyard, on camping trips, and during quiet weekends, carving feather sticks, building tinder bundles, experimenting with different ignition methods. When you practice in calm conditions, you build confidence that carries into real emergencies, when every second matters. Many preppers have stories of cold nights turned safe because they had the right spark at the right time. A warm fire isn't just physical comfort, it's psychological stability. It gives you a moment to breathe, regroup, and think clearly. And in survival situations, a clear mind is just as valuable as any tool you carry. Once you realize how much control a simple flame can give you, it becomes obvious why the next item is so essential. After all, fire keeps you warm, but tools keep you capable. And there's one tool in particular that seasoned preppers consider an extension of their own hands. A reliable pocket knife is one of those tools people underestimate until the exact moment they need it. Real preppers know it's not just another item, it's the backbone of capability. Whether you're cutting rope, opening packaging, preparing food, or making quick adjustments in the field, a knife becomes the quiet partner that never complains and never hesitates. It's simple, dependable, and always ready to serve when the unexpected hits. Most beginners laugh at the idea of carrying a knife daily until they in a situation where one tiny cut or slice could solve the problem instantly. You'd be surprised how often life throws small challenges your way. Need to trim paracord, slice tinder, sharpen a stick for cooking? These aren't dramatic survival scenes. They're everyday tasks that feel 10 times harder without a reliable blade. Preppers don't choose knives based on looks, they choose based on performance. A good knife should feel solid in the hand, with a grip that stays put, even in bad weather. Stainless steel or high-carbon steel, a dependable lock mechanism, and a sharp edge that holds. These are the details that separate a gimmick from a life-saving tool. When your hands are cold or time is tight, you'll want a knife you trust. Using a knife is also a skill, and like all skills, it grows with practice. Preppers often spend time cutting rope, carving wood, and sharpening blades until the movement becomes second nature. That familiarity builds confidence, and confidence becomes control. Because in a crisis, hesitation is the enemy. When you know your tools, you move smoother and think clearer. There's a common saying among preppers: a knife in the pocket is better than a dozen on the shelf. And it's true. A blade is only useful if it's on you when you need it. That's why many people keep a small EDC knife clipped to their pocket or pack. Light enough to forget about, strong enough to handle real work. That balance is what makes it essential. Once you experience how a simple knife boosts your capability, you start to see your environment differently. You stop feeling helpless and start feeling prepared. And that shift in mindset becomes even more powerful when you realize how much confidence a little light can bring, especially when the world suddenly goes dark. Darkness changes everything. Even familiar places become strange when the lights go out. Real preppers know that the moment a blackout hits, your sense of control disappears fast. A reliable flashlight, or better yet, a headlamp, brings that control right back. It cuts through uncertainty, showing you obstacles before you trip over them and dangers before you step into them. Most people underestimate how disorienting total darkness can be. You bump into furniture, stub your toes, reach for walls, and suddenly every sound feels louder than it should. Now imagine dealing with that during an emergency. That's why preppers don't rely on phone lights. They're weak, battery-hungry, and useless when your device dies. A proper flashlight, on the other hand, turns chaos into clarity. Preppers look for lights that are waterproof, shockproof, and built to last. LED bulbs for efficiency, adjustable brightness modes, and a sturdy metal casing are essentials. Some even carry strobe modes for signaling or self-defense. A good light dose in tea just helps you be seen if you ever need help. That versatility makes it one of the most underrated survival items out there. Headlamps offer even more advantages because they free up both hands. When you're fixing gear, gathering wood, or navigating rough terrain, having light that follows your line of sight is a game changer. It makes tasks faster, safer, and far less stressful. Preppers often keep both a flashlight for reach and brightness, and a headlamp for mobility and multitasking. Most preppers also keep extra batteries or rechargeable power sources in their kits, because a light is only useful if it stays lit. And in those moments when you're deep in the dark, trying to stay calm while making decisions that matter, that steady beam becomes more than illumination. It becomes confidence, composure, and control. And once you realize how much confidence a reliable light gives you, you start noticing another truth. Even with a flashlight, crises expose how fragile modern conveniences really are. That's when smart preppers turn their attention to the one resource that disappears from store shelves faster than anything else. When a crisis is on the horizon, the first thing to vanish from store shelves isn't canned food or batteries, it's water. Real preppers have seen it happen again and again. One weather alert, one breaking news headline, and suddenly entire aisles are stripped bare in minutes. It's a sobering reminder of how fast panic spreads and how quickly people go from calm to desperate when water supply feels threatened. Think back to any big storm or outage. Maybe you watched people rushing through stores, grabbing whatever they could find, bottles, jugs, anything that held liquid. You can almost feel the urgency in the air. But seasoned preppers don't wait for that moment. They already have their water stored, neatly organized, and ready long before the crowd realizes what's happening. That preparation turns fear into confidence. Proper water containers are more than plastic jugs. Preppers invest in durable BPA-free containers designed to store water safely for months at a time. Some choose stackable bricks, others prefer larger drums or collapsible bladders for emergencies. The goal is always the same: have enough clean water to stay calm, healthy, and self-reliant no matter how long the taps stay dry. Water isn't just for drinking, it's for hygiene, cooking, cleaning wounds, and keeping your family functioning when life gets disrupted. That's why preppers calculate carefully: at least 1 gallon per person per day, stored smartly and rotated regularly. It's not paranoia, it's math. And math is something you can trust when everything else feels unpredictable. Many preppers also keep a few smaller containers filled and ready for quick grabs. These portable bottles and jugs become lifesavers during evacuations, road closures, or sudden boil water advisories. Having multiple sizes means you're ready for both long-term sheltering and fast mobility. Flexibility is survival. And once you see how water storage turns panic into peace, you begin to understand another truth about crises. Physical danger isn't the only threat. The human body is fragile, and even minor injuries can become serious under stress. That's why the next item on this list is something every prepper treats as absolutely non-negotiable. A lot of people don't realize how quickly a small injury can turn serious in a crisis. A minor cut, a twisted ankle, a burn from a hot pan, things that barely register on a normal day suddenly become major problems when medical help isn't available. Real preppers know that emergencies aren't just about threats from the outside. Sometimes the danger comes from the simplest mistake at the worst possible moment. Think about a time you got hurt at home: a sliced finger, a fall, maybe even a nasty scrape. Now imagine that happening during a blackout, a storm, or an evacuation. It hits differently. Without proper supplies, even cleaning a wound becomes a challenge. That's why seasoned preppers keep a well-stocked first aid kit close by. Not just a basic one, but one built with intention. A solid first aid kit goes beyond adhesive bandages. Preppers include antiseptics, sterile gauze, pain relievers, tweezers, burn dressings, and sometimes even tourniquets for severe trauma. Every item has purpose. It is not about being dramatic, it's about being prepared for the injuries most people never plan for. Because when stress rises, accidents happen more often and escalate faster. And here's what separates real preparedness from false security: knowing how to use the gear. Preppers often take basic first aid courses or spend time learning online how to clean wounds, stop bleeding, wrap joints, and recognize signs of infection. Those small pieces of knowledge turn fear into confidence. When you know what to do, you move with clarity instead of panic. A first aid kit also becomes a mental anchor. In a crisis, having the supplies to take care of yourself or someone you love brings an immense sense of stability. You're not helpless. You're not waiting for help that may never arrive. You're equipped, and that feeling alone can change the entire tone of an emergency. Once you understand how vital first aid truly is, another truth becomes clear. Even the strongest prepper can't do much with injured hands. And that's why the next item on this list might seem small, but it can make an enormous difference when things get rough. Most people think survival is all about gear, fire, water, tools, lights. But real preppers know the truth. The most important part of preparedness, ISNT, what's in your bag, it's what's in your mind. And that's exactly why an emergency binder is such an overlooked essential. When a crisis hits and emotions run high, clear information becomes just as valuable as food or shelter. Think about the last time the power went out and your phone died. Suddenly, you couldn't access contacts, passwords, medical info, or even simple directions. Everything you depend on lives inside digital screens that fail the moment the grid collapses. An emergency binder brings all of that back into the real world, printed, organized, and immune to outages. Preppers fill these binders with the essentials: family contacts, copies of IDs, insurance documents, emergency plans, meeting points, maps, and even backup instructions for gear. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. When confusion hits, this binder becomes your compass guiding your decisions instead of forcing you to make guesses in the dark. There's also a psychological advantage. In chaotic situations, your mind can freeze or go blank. Stress clouds, judgment, and simple details suddenly feel impossible to remember. But when you can flip open a binder and see a clear plan staring back at you, your confidence snaps into place. You stop reacting and start leading. Families who've lived through hurricanes, fires, or sudden evacuations often say the same thing. We were glad we had our documents ready. Because when you're rushing to leave or trying to rebuild after disaster, missing paperwork becomes a nightmare. A simple binder saves hours, prevents chaos, and protects your identity when you need stability most. And once you understand how grounding this small tool can be, it sets the stage for the final truth about preparedness. Because having the right items is important, but knowing how they fit together and how to act when it counts matters even more. And that's exactly where we're headed next. At the end of the day, preparedness isn't about fear, it's about peace. Real preppers don't walk around expecting the world to fall apart. They simply understand that life can change without warning. And when it does, the people who stay calm are the ones who took responsibility long before the crisis ever appeared. Every item we talked about carries that message. Control comes from readiness, not luck. The truth is, you don't need to become an expert overnight. You don't need a bunker, a garage full of gear, or a complicated plan. You just need to take the first step, one small action that shifts you from hoping things go well to being ready when they don't. And once you feel that shift, something clicks. You start seeing preparation not as a burden, but as a gift you give to yourself and the people you love. Every crisis teaches the same lesson. It's better to be the person who is ready than the person who wishes they were. So start small, stay consistent, and keep learning. The more prepared you become, the more confident your life feels even on ordinary days, and that confidence sets the perfect stage for one final thought before we wrap this up. So now the question becomes, what are you going to do with this knowledge? These items only matter if you take the next step and make them part of your reality. Maybe you start with just one, maybe two, but the important part is starting. Preparedness grows fast once you take that first move, and who knows, that one decision might be the thing that protects you when life throws the unexpected your way. I'd love to hear from you. Seriously, which of these survival items surprised you the most? Which one are you planning to pick up first? Your experience might help someone else who's just beginning their preparedness journey. So drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's build a community where everyone feels more capable, more confident, and more ready than ever. And if you found value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every week, we dive deeper into real preparedness, no fear, no hype, just practical strategies that work. This is your chance to stay ahead, stay informed, and take control of your survival story. Now let's keep going. Your journey is just getting started.